Hi there, this is Mark Olofson with the Texas Education Agency. This is a re-recording of a webinar that we did on June 26, 2019, presenting to EPP data folks and leadership around some projects that are happening here at the agency and also highlighting some great work by folks being done at the field. Due to some technical issues, we missed the recording the very beginning of this webinar, and so, a number of folks have reached out to us. They really wanted to hear the content, so we've gone ahead and re-recorded the beginning of this webinar, and then it'll be presented alongside the main bulk of the content, which was captured. So without further ado, this is the what we saw back on June 26th. So our purpose in the SHAPA, Educator Data and Program Accountability, is really to ensure data quality and integrity, overseeing the data collection, analyses, and reporting, and we really aim to support our EPPs as learning organizations. So our true north statement on this is for us to be able to provide better, faster, and more actionable data. So if we think about making progress in that work, and we've been, working on a lot of progress in our shop, is being able to support EPPs past, moving past just sort of like data for compliance and accreditation, but being able to use those data for monitoring and reporting on current processes, and then helping support EPPs to do continuous improvement and engage in database decision making around those things. So one of the things is, how do we get that data, that rich data that's supplied by EPPs and that also already exists in TEA databases? How do we get that data back to EPPs? And so there's a number of different ways that we do that, kind of from the most like the quick and more real time down to some clunkier ways. And so what we're seeing here is that there's current reporting tools that already exist within ECOS. Folks can click and see their pass rates within ECOS. There's accountability reports. These are the full accounting of your the ASAP related calculations that are issued to programs. There's the consumer information reports that are PDFs that are posted to our website that are publicly available. Of course, there's our raw data sets, which are de-identified and then down to public information requests, which is a clunkier way to get a hold of the data which we have. So looking at the updates that we've been making, we're about halfway through 2018-2020. So, we've been updating our collections, updating ECOS, removing collections whenever possible, and increasing the formalization of previously informal processes. We've been working on overhauling some of our analyses, and then also we updated those static reports. So what you see highlighted here in blue is what we're really talking about today, and that has to do with streamlining the EPP reporting and then further automating our analyses, our calculations, and then responding to our stakeholder input. And we see that as sort of like culminating in public-facing and EPP-facing dashboards. So the questions for today, or the questions back on June 26th, were what are some EPPs doing to access, analyze, and shape data for monitoring and continuous improvement? And then how does TEA plan on supporting these efforts? So that was the front content of the webinar, and as you'll see here, we next hand it over to some of our presenters. The next voices you'll be hearing are Alma Rodriguez and Jose Hinojosa from UTRGV, or the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to them now. Thank you.
Teachers in the state of Texas. So this gives you an idea of the students that we serve and the mission that we have. Can we move on to the next slide? So in talking about our mission in the College of Education and P16 integration, it is longer than this, but I wanted to share just a couple of ideas that are included in our mission that relate to the work that we are sharing with you today. So in our mission, we have that we engage in continuous improvement through curricular and technological innovation in order to remain responsive to the changing educational and global reality. We also have, as part of our mission, to lead through evidence-based decision-making and data literacy in order to share our story with the academic and broader research communities, as well as our public school partners, families, and policymakers. So as you can see, continuous improvement, evidence-based decision-making, data literacy are all components of the mission of the College of Education in P16 integration. So our faculty who wrote this mission truly believe in how important it is to use data to make decisions and to engage in continuous improvement of our programs. In the College of Education, we have 3 priorities, and one of those is to develop a culture of inquiry. So we believe that it is through inquiry that we are going to discover what it is that we need to focus on and how to better serve our constituents. Our other 2 priorities are quality and positionality. Can we move on? So in our vision for data use, we have here an example of what our future dashboards would look like. What we want to accomplish with our data use is to align high impact data across UTRGV's system. I'm sure that we are in a similar situation that many of you, where you have multiple sources of data that don't necessarily talk to each other or come together into a single place. So many times when you have decisions to make, you have to pull data from multiple sources and then figure out how you're going to compare those data so that you can inform your work. So because we encountered that situation, we had this vision of creating dashboards and reporting structures that would allow our faculty and staff to access and review data when making decisions, all in a timely manner and in a single place. Next slide. So our goal with this vision is to integrate those multiple systems to obtain a complete picture of candidates' progress that would allow us to track our candidates from enrollment through progression through the program, along the way, monitoring their performance, and then following our completers after they leave our program and once they are hired in the different school districts. So these dashboards will allow us to access program information as well as information from our school partners. So the types of data that we are bringing into our dashboards, in terms of enrollment, we are bringing demographic information that will allow us to sort our data by ethnicity, for example, by socioeconomic status, by program, and by cohort. In terms of progression of our candidates, we want to be able to track the students that have applied to our EPP, the students that have been accepted, and then those students who are enrolled, the students who have completed the program, and we also want to track their employment. In terms of performance, what we are bringing in to these dashboards are all of the indicators of how our students are doing through the program. Some examples are their GPA, their assessments of dispositions, student surveys that our candidates complete while they're in the program and at exit and after they have completed the program. All of our key assessments, those that are embedded in the different courses, as well as what we call our unit assessments, which give us a good picture of how all of our students are doing. For those key assessments, we will have the ability to drill down to different programs, different certification areas, but also to see the data in the aggregate as to how all of our candidates are doing. Some of the key assessments will include what all EPPs have, such as student-teacher observations. So we want to track how candidates are doing, how they're progressing through their clinical teaching from their first to second, third observation, etc. We also will be able to track our candidates through the different gateways that we have in our program, that they have to complete those milestones or success indicators that will allow our candidates to make adequate progress. For post-completion, we are going to be bringing in certification data as well as employment data. And for program information, we will have all of those satisfaction surveys that I've mentioned that will give us that big picture of what our completers and our current students think of the quality of preparation they are receiving. In terms of university school partnerships, we are going to be bringing field placements information, cooperating teacher information, as I mentioned earlier, employment information, but also impact data. So we have established data sharing agreements with 5 school districts so far, and we're in the process of establishing some more agreements where the districts will be sharing with us impact data of our completers in terms of P12 student learning, as well as principal surveys and teacher surveys in terms of the satisfaction of their preparation. And we also aspire to have retention data available in these dashboards. All of these data will be used to inform our practice in order to continue to engage in continuous improvement of our programs, which is an important and central aspect of our work. Next slide. So here you have some of the technical details as how we are bringing all of this together. We are being supported by UPD Consulting to create these dashboards that you see on the screen, how they are going to integrate the different sources of data. So we are going to be pulling data from Banner, from TK20, from the K-12 systems into this teacher preparation data model operational data store. And the dashboards are currently being customized to meet the needs of our program and obtaining the feedback of our faculty, our program coordinators, and leadership here in the college in terms of how they want to see these data to be able to make sense of it and engage in this, like I said, process of continuous improvement, making decisions that are informed. So the way we use this information currently, we gather all of our faculty annually in what we call our data summit. And so this coming August, we will be the first time that we will have our TPDM dashboards available for our faculty to learn how to use during our data summit. We also have regular program meetings and leadership meetings in which our faculty and leadership look at data to inform their decisions. So we intend to continue to engage in all of those processes of continuous improvement and evidence-based decision making, but in an enhanced way, facilitated by the data that will be coming together into this single and central repository available for all of our faculty. Some of the challenges that we anticipate is expanding those data sharing agreements with all of our school districts that we serve, and continuing to monitor where our candidates are employed and monitoring their retention. So it is a lot easier for us to track and gather all the data of these candidates while they're in our program. But as I anticipate might be the situation with other EPPs, it is a greater challenge to track our graduates once they've left us. So we have made a lot of progress, like I said, with 5 school districts so far in engaging in these data sharing agreements. And we look forward to enhancing that work with more partners. So in a nutshell, this is where we are. This is our vision and our current development, and we look forward to start using our dashboards this coming fall.
Alma, this is Mark. Thank you so much for sharing about that. I wondered if, we've got a lot of presenters, but I wonder if you could share and reflect a little bit about how you see what y'all are exploring and working on, the utility that other EPPs might have from a similar system versus what you feel is really kind of like customized to your particular setting.
Yes, we are having the opportunity to customize some of the features of the dashboard because we were fortunate enough to become early adopters of with the EdFi work. But I also think that once, if TA, for example, would have something like this available for all EPPs, the benefit would be great in terms of having the ability to look at all of your data in the same place and drill down to the level that is required to answer important questions is essential. So I don't know, Mark, if I'm answering your question, or please clarify if I left something out.
No, that's I think that's great, and I really appreciate that reflection and for sharing all of the great work that y'all are doing down there at UTRGV. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker, if it's okay. So our next speaker is Paul Chavez, who is with the Region 13 Service Center. I am going to come down here and unmute Paul. Hold on, there's a long list of folks. So there we go. So Paul, you should be unmuted now, and we have, you can go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about some of the work related to data dashboarding and such. Yeah, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, good morning. So I'm Paul Chavez, and I am an associate director at Region 13, working with our information and communication technology groups. In particular, our goal around data and continuous improvement focuses very much on raising awareness and also getting adoption of data standards within our K-12 schools. And of course, we're specifically working with Region 13 districts, but it's also an effort in trying to get that awareness and adoption across the service centers across the state. There are several service centers that are working towards this same vision and goal. In particular, service centers work on a daily basis with our K-12 schools with their student information systems and the multiple vendors that they use in order to just facilitate the operation of a school day from one week to the next. So some of the things that Alma kind of described in the data environment, in terms of you've got different data sets and they sit in a lot of different individual silos, and it's difficult to use it because of the fact that you have to go from one system to another. You have another login over here, or you have to grab an export from over there and try and build something that would be useful, whether it's a report or a dashboard or things of that nature. We realize that we have to kind of get to a point where we have a standard set of framework in order to share data. And that's where we're moving to in terms of helping districts understand the need to adopt a data standard and also have some tools to facilitate that process. And so we are helping districts get to that awareness point, and we're introducing them to the data standard associated with EdFi, which is something else that Alma referenced as well in her presentation. So those are some of the things specifically that are happening, at least at the service center level. And of course, our immediate interest in working within those data sets is to just help improve the school environment to make that data more actionable on a day-to-day basis so they can use it for decisions, and in particular, make some better decisions for student outcomes right away rather than having to wait weeks or a whole semester to expire before they can see some type of trend or get some type of information that would be useful for a particular student that needs a particular type of support. So those are some of the things and use cases that we're trying to address with these types of strategies. And I think what we see is just kind of the potential around this is just being able to have that kind of standard set and the alignment with also how schools report, for instance, PEIMS data. If that process also has that kind of data standard in place and schools see the value of being able to facilitate that process, adopt these standards, and use data that will help them in many different ways beyond just doing PEIMS submissions, but also with their third-party vendors. And when I mention third-party vendors, we're talking about everything from just, the systems that need rostering data on students and teachers, course information, but to assessment information as well, to transportation, cafeteria, I mean, you name it. Every school district has about 10 to 15 at minimum different vendors that need some type of data that stems from their student information system, and it's just a challenge on a day-to-day basis to try and make those things work and have accurate sets of data from one system to the next. So we are working towards those goals in mind, and in particular, we are working directly with the EdFi Alliance, and we're actually building some of those tools to help populate an EdFi ODS, an operational data store, so we can initially just show districts some dashboards to start those conversations and show them examples of how they can use data that is much more real time than what they've ever used before. So those are kind of our goals and steps that we have in mind for the short term, but in the long term, that's where we want to see that the pieces that would be helpful through this process is that we continue to talk in our different groups and audiences, from educator prep to technology to special ed to all of our different audiences. We need to continue to stress the importance of data standards. And the more we hear that about, has your district adopted a data standard in order to share this type of information, that will be useful when we're having this conversation, no matter where we're talking to within the hierarchy of a particular district. And that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Paul, this is Mark. Thank you so much for sharing about that work. I wonder, could you share a little bit, what, as you're looking at, LEAs who are getting ready to do this type of work or engaging in this type of work, what do they need to have, maybe capacity-wise, maybe perspective-wise? What do LEAs need to kind of have and be ready to do in order to fully engage in this work from your perspective?
So in particular, of course, we work with districts of varying sizes, and we know that that impacts their capability of being able to implement these types of solutions. So our bigger districts, they just really need the education on a data standard and how things could operate, and they can implement a lot of these tools on their own, but they still need that kind of community to help answer questions and to help them move in that direction to see the value of being able to have these types of solutions implemented. But when we start working towards middle to small school districts, that's where we see service centers can really help in terms of, we can do a lot of the hosting. In fact, we host many student information systems currently for districts across the state. And so that will continue to be a function that we can provide, and it will be necessary because many of those smaller school districts don't have the technical expertise to host and operate an operational data store and configure those types of tools. And so that's what we can bring to the table and do those parts for them. We'll do that heavy technical lift, but they'll still get the same value as even the big districts that have the staff that can implement these types of tools on their own. We can help on that end to help equalize that playing field for our districts.
Thank you so much for that and for your perspective and being here today. You know, I think that it's really important for us to, like, not only as an EPP community, to be able to really understand and learn from, you know, from lots of folks who are engaging in similar work, perhaps in related but not identical settings. So thanks so much. Looking forward, we'd like to now ask, and Paul, I'll go ahead, I'll mute back. Sarah Beal, who is at Texas Tech with US Prep. Sarah, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. You're unmuted now, and if you can introduce yourself and share with the group.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Beal, and I am the Executive Director for US Prep. I'm really excited. There are actually a lot of intersections of our work that have already been presented, but really excited about the work underway at the TEA. And you can go ahead and there you go. Thanks. We are US Prep, actually is an acronym that stands for University School Partnerships for the Renewal of Educator Preparation. And we are housed at Texas Tech University. We've been a national center since 2015. And we started with 6 universities at the end of 2016. And now we are a coalition comprised of 14 universities and school district partnerships. Specifically in Texas, there are 5 universities and school partnerships, and so we're really excited again about the work underway with TEA, and just see a lot of opportunity as we're working with these 5 universities and beyond around data collection and use and visualization. So our coalition coheres around 4 quality objectives around teacher preparation, probably very similar to many teacher prep programs across the state of Texas. We have kind of honed in on 4 quality objectives in our work. The first one is the idea that our candidates are competent in teaching, and specifically that they're competent in teaching historically underserved students. Also, that we are committed as a program with our school district partners to use data for continuous improvement. Third, we work with all levels of teacher educators to ensure that we're effective in our own teaching practices as we're working with students who have been historically underserved. And as we define teacher educators, we define them at several levels. The cooperating and or mentor teacher level, that's with the students during field experience. The supervisor and or what we call a site coordinator, who observes candidates in the field and evaluates their teaching practices. And then finally, and I would say probably most important at the top of our work, is that universities and schools are working hand in hand to prepare teachers together, and they're both have an equal voice in shaping programming and equally responsible for working together to support candidates, and that the teacher prep programs are responsive to the needs in the communities that they're serving. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about, before I talk about the slide that's before you, I wanted to talk a little bit about what we have experienced in our work with 14 universities. We're at the place now where several of our inaugural universities are finishing their transformation period. It's been 3 years that we've been working together. And as we enter into this work, we recognized quickly that there's some challenges around data. And it could be that you have faced these challenges as well. The first one is that some of our universities actually did not have any really robust ways to collect data. Sometimes even performance assessments or walkthroughs in the classrooms with teacher candidates were done paper pencil, and then were later scanned and then submitted for compliance purposes. Another challenge that we recognized is that there's oftentimes one or two people at the university level who have access to the data, and so it would require kind of clunky systems to even get access to data. They, would have to be emailing different faculty and emails on Excel spreadsheets, etc. And then contrary, I think, to oftentimes what happens that we think about is that there actually was, in all of the universities we worked with, more of a data glut than anything. And what I mean by that is that they actually have a ton of data. There was just, kind of this question of where do we start? How do we start this process of knowing how to look at data and what to look at, and what I think, as Alma talked about, like, what are our questions that we have as a program and as school districts around these data, and then how do we use these data to shape and help address our answers, which oftentimes is, I think we all know, when we start looking at data, it leads to more questions, which is really good. That's how you create kind of this culture of inquiry, I think, that Alma referred to. And so recognizing these challenges early on, you can imagine kind of the undertaking that this has been for US Prep. Thinking about, well, we have quite a few universities. These are kind of technical systems that are needed to support some of the challenges we're facing, and we took that on, and it's been great, and we've had successes and we've had some challenges, which I'll talk about. So we, about 2 years ago, recognized these challenges and specifically honed in on this idea of how do we support universities in the coalition with having robust collection systems, data collection systems, so moving away from the paper pencil to more robust systems like TK20 or a watermark tool. And then also that those of us who have worked with such tools like that also recognize that they can still be somewhat clunky sometimes when we look at when we want to access and visualize data. And so then how do we get systems that will connect them to ways in which we can visualize data in a way that's really going to help us move forward and create questions and get answers to our questions. And so we wanted to create a robust data dashboard system for our inaugural universities. And so what we did, and you can kind of see a snapshot before you, is that we started with use cases. So we have, as a coalition, committed to collecting and analyzing some common data metrics. And we created some use cases together around those metrics. So for example, if I am a teacher educator and or a dean or associate dean, I want to see the demographics of our teacher candidates and be able to compare them to the demographics of the K-12 students with the districts we're serving. If I am a teacher educator and or a dean, I'd like to see how our candidates are scoring on dispositions. So that's their professionalism competencies. If I am a teacher educator or dean, I want to see how candidates are doing on their content knowledge exams. And then, so those are just a few examples. And those, what we would call those pre-service metrics. We also collect data and wrote use case scenarios around even like their candidate self-efficacy and their confidence in teaching in schools that specifically serve Black, Latinx, Native American, and or economically disadvantaged students, because that was a key mission of ours in US Prep, that we're partnering with schools who serve our students who have been historically underserved. And so we have quite a few use case scenarios when it comes to pre-service data. I won't go through all of those. Those are just a few examples. But then we also have some at an in-service level as well, which have been a challenge for us. Even at Texas Tech, who has been working and has had MOUs and data sharing agreements with many local schools across Texas. What we have found is that we've had to have quite a few people on staff at Texas Tech to try to get the data back from the district to the university to help us really, understand how candidates are performing once they graduate. And we have found that that's been very challenging, and oftentimes what we know, it's been taxing for our school district partners because they just don't have necessarily the human capital and the time to support gathering those data and providing it back to the university. And so we're continually thinking about how what we can do to mitigate that. And so I think that, you know, TEA is going to really help those efforts. But some of the use cases that we've had around in-service data are things like, you know, are our graduates employed? So if I am a teacher, educator, or administrator, I want to see where graduates employed. And one of the important parts of that for us is where they're employed. Are they employed in the schools in which they trained, predominantly schools who are economically disadvantaged, et cetera? We also want to see if they're retained. So, you know, are they retained after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, et cetera? And when possible, when we can get these data back from the districts, we would also like to see their effectiveness. So our graduates' effectiveness as measured as their evaluation scores and impact on student achievement. And then we also have data related to how principals' perceptions of the preparedness of the graduates, as well as you know, the teacher candidate and their perceptions of the program. Also, just one last thing, we as a coalition have developed some common metrics as well. That's not in here, but it's common metrics related to district perceptions of the program. So how districts perceive their partnership and in their work with the university. We also have faculty surveys and their perceptions, and then what we call a supervisor or site coordinator perception. So we have some common metrics that we use across the coalition, which allow us to really look across the coalition at some common statements and work together to celebrate wins, and then to focus as a coalition on how we can improve together. So just a quick, I think you've heard this from our other two presenters, but just as I think Alma said, you know, we collect data on the left, you can see from many different sources. So the dashboard is going to allow us to kind of synthesize all of those collection sources and feed it through, you know, the EdFi API to standardize the data. The data will be housed in an operational data store, or ODS. And then right now, what we're doing is we'll have a common US prep data dashboard that we'll see in the aggregate just those common metrics we use across the coalition. But then you can see the other several universities there, Sam Houston State, University of Houston, Texas Tech, and then Jackson State University in Mississippi will have access to all of the common data that I just shared with you, those use cases, and then they'll be able to also do some customization. So they'll have access to their own data dashboards with some customizations. So just some thoughts as I just, you know, we were asked to share some potential challenges. In our work, what we found is that, you know, some of the universities with whom we work didn't have access or didn't have robust data collection systems. So that was really important that we provide them with those. So several of the universities we've provided accounts to TK20, so they're now utilizing TK20. What we realized early is that data sharing agreements, going through legal and all of that process really takes a lot of time. Took us almost a year, to be honest, and some of them we're still working on. And so that there's, you know, in my mind, I think like you double the time that you think it will take to begin really moving forward. One thing that is really interesting, I think, about this third and fourth bullet here is that we, you know, in our country, there's been a lot of funding invested into data dashboards, but oftentimes, and there's been a lot of studies around this, and we've been paying close attention to those studies and the results, is that they can sit on a shelf and go unused. And so what's important about that we learned early on is that stakeholders have to have a voice in shaping the visualization and what they see as important. So what data do they want to see and why? And that's kind of those use cases I was sharing with you earlier. And that's critical if we want to make it relevant to the stakeholders that will be using it. And then also the idea of ensuring that stakeholders are trained. And I put this a couple times, you'll say, you know, training the users, training the users, training the users, because you're really changing a culture a culture of how data are accessed, and a culture how data are used. And so it will take many iterations of training, a lot of communication, and so it takes a lot of time. So allowing the process to unfold, train, iterate, etc. And so we're in the process right now that our universities are getting ready to pilot the dashboard. One is piloting right now, and then we're going to launch the pilot with 3 other universities in the fall. So it's exciting work, and I appreciate the opportunity to share with you all today.
Sarah, thanks so much. That's really super exciting work, and thank you for sharing. I wanted to kind of like let folks know, again, we apologize for a little bit of the late start, and we appreciate y'all being flexible. We are probably going to go ahead and plan on going 10 minutes over. We are recording this, so if you do have to, if you have another obligation at 11 and you have to leave, we should be able to access the recording down the line. Just acknowledging that we lost a little bit of time on the front end, we're going to take a little bit of time on the back end. So thanks again, Sarah, so much for sharing about what y'all are doing across US Prep there. I'm really interested about that collaboration and making sure that helping to collaboratively shape these pieces. I'd like to go ahead and hand it over to Nancy Smith. Nancy, I will, hold on, I got to do the mute thing. There we go. Nancy, I will let you introduce yourself and talk us through your slides.
All right, thanks, Mark. And I probably won't need that much time because 2 of our early adopter pilot implementers have already spoken. UTRGV and US Prep are working on the teacher prep data model right now, so you can go ahead and forward. You've heard mention of EdFi a few times. It's otherwise known at TEA as the Texas Student Data System. EdFi is the basis of that. And as has been mentioned before, it is creating a data standard or a data model that focuses on interoperability about data from multiple sources, creating an operational data store, and then the APIs, application programming interfaces, are just easier automated ways of sending data from one data system to another. So that a whole lot of technology has been developed over the past 10 years. The teacher prep data model is an extension to the EdFi data model. It looks smaller on this picture. It's actually very large because it does integrate data from district, state, and the universities, all the different data sources. But right now it is an extension to the core EdFi data model. So for institutions that already have an EdFi ODS, there is going to be a way to integrate the teacher prep data model. Go ahead and forward. So the teacher prep data model, and Alma and Sarah, are perfect examples of why it came about. The Gates Foundation has been supporting and improving teacher prep programs for years, and based on the information from the field, realized they needed to focus on the data systems. So UPD Consulting has been working the past 3 years or so, doing a lot of stakeholder engagement, identifying use cases, and then working with the EdFi Alliance to actually develop the teacher prep data model and develop the teacher prep dashboards that have already been referenced. Come forward. I think we've already covered the benefits of the TPDM. Basically, we need to centralize, we need to help automate and centralize and standardize the multiple data sources that teacher prep programs or educator prep programs have, where teacher prep data model focuses on the teacher data, not all the principals yet, or other types of educators. But then the end goal of all data, no matter how automated the data integration is or how cool the data store is, if you're not going to access it and use it, there's not a lot of reason to collect it. So ultimately, you need to have dashboards or ways to access the data store and pull out research data sets, create visuals, and actually use the data to change the culture. And so the work over the past 3-4 years is really focused on the full spectrum, from collection, standardization, integration, and then data use. Go ahead and forward. As has been mentioned before, if you're talking teacher prep programs, you're not just relying on the data at the higher ed institutions. You need local education agency data, you need state education agency data. Mark and Nicole working at TEA, and they get data from teacher prep programs and LEAs. I think this TPDM really brings to the forefront how dependent we are on each other, no matter where we sit in the picture, and we need to find a way to easily integrate the data and create access and use. So just a reiteration here on this slide, there are so many different types of data from different organizations, different service levels, people, roles. You know, you might be a student, you might eventually become a teacher candidate, you're going to become a staff or faculty or a mentor teacher, lots of different data sources. It's a complex issue, and with the benefit of all the technology and the advanced thinking with the EdFi processes, the data standard and technology tools, we are making a way to make the data more easily accessible and usable in the field. Go ahead. So just a little plug for the EdFi Alliance. You can find us at edfi.org. I am the community manager for the Teacher Prep Data Model, and we are having our annual EdFi Summit September 30th through October 2nd in Austin, that really highlights a lot of the work that's going on in the field within the K-12 community, and then also some of the Teacher Prep Data Model sessions. And this next page, for those of you who are EdFi licensees, you can kind of look under the hood, and these are just some URLs to get to the more technical information about the Teacher Prep Data Model.
Thank you, Nancy, so much. And I think that would it be fair to say that if folks had kind of follow-up questions about the TPDM that they weren't able to kind of suss out via Get Started page, they'd be okay to reach out to you?
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing. We have a little bit of time left, and we'd like to share a little bit about what we're looking at here at the TEA. So from folks, you know, I was listening to our folks share, and I heard a lot about the need for, you know, common language and data standards for some common technologies, but also a lot around collaboration and learning from each other as we're able to allow us to build capacity to really engage with data dashboards, with kind of some of the technical under the hood pieces, allowing us to kind of all, there's a lot, well, we recognize, you know, there's a broad diversity of ed prep programs here in Texas, but as you know, folks have noted, there's also a number of common measures and common needs, and we here at the state, we think we're uniquely positioned in order to help support, particularly along those commonalities. So, you know, this is a little bit of a vision for our shop in this work. In this project particularly, and we're going to suss out a little bit about what we're talking about in this project, but we're thinking about, you know we need to update our infrastructure. We need to integrate with EPP's data systems. We saw Nancy had that kind of like a diagram with a lot of different data systems. And then we need to provide local and secure reporting so that EPPs like y'all can do your own analyses, right, based on all these different data. So we sort of in a future state think that there's data generating activities, data is collected, reported, pieced together, and then presented back in such a way so that EPPs can do locally relevant analyses and monitoring in order not only to monitor current initiatives, but to inform the structure of future initiatives to help kind of like guide your work as you engage in those processes. So we think that this as a project should allow us to drive improvement and innovation, support that innovation and improvement, to increase data quality and allow for deeper data conversations. And also we think that this will help increase our transparency and of course stakeholder access to information. So what we're doing is we're pursuing setting up EPP facing dashboards to support EPPs in their use of this enriched data. So we heard from US Prep, we heard from UTRGV about kind of their doing work in this space, and as we heard, we think that there's elements of this that all EPPs can support. And so at TEA, this is what we're looking at standing up for all EPPs. Is these types of data dashboards that allow for the EPP end user analyses and visualization driven, of course, by the end user. So what that means is we know that there's data that TEA has, we know that there's data that EPPs have, we think that that data can come together and be that sort of like dashboard data, but instead of leaving that data in a data glut, as I believe was mentioned, we're parsing that out into these publicly facing dashboards that fulfill some requirements that are necessary for our department. Then also the EPP facing dashboards that'll allow for y'all to do deep dives with locally relevant and identified data that allow you to really make sense of these data within your own local context. And we also think that that dashboard data can fuel other mandated reporting. I know a lot of folks have been back and forth with us around finishing out Title II reporting. I know that there is other reports that we also get to make sure get produced and put out. So drawing from that same common data source, we think that we can fuel all these different pieces. I'll let Nicole talk a little bit about looking at some examples of dashboards.
Absolutely. So as Mark mentioned, we do kind of have statutory kind of mandates for reporting specific data points as it relates to consumer protection. And I think those align largely with our ASAP indicators. So we're in the process of developing public-facing dashboards that do answer some of those questions and allow the public, general public, as well as you guys to look at the data that is reported to us and kind of sift through and answer some questions that they may have from a consumer perspective or general public perspective. From there, EPPs will have their own internal facing dashboard, which will allow you to drill down to the individual candidate level. So you see the general information, you will be able to drill down and say, okay, now what specific candidates does this apply to? And then do the programmatic process improvement that you need to do in order to make whatever changes you feel are necessary. So we want to have consistency and transparency in the data that we're reporting so that the public-facing dashboards align with what the internal-facing dashboards report as well. But we also want to make sure that you're very comfortable with these in knowing that the internal ones are candidate level and the more specific data are for your eyes only.
So in order to support that awesome sort of end product, right, we're pursuing standing up a teacher prep data model that's TPDM that Nancy and others have referred to, operational data stores to assist EPPs to do this work, right? So that means essentially standing up a data stack for y'all to put data into and for TEA to put data into that'll then fuel the dashboards that we're speaking of. So what this would mean is, not only can data come from ECOS, as it's currently, folks report EPP data into ECOS, building a pipeline between these ODSs and ECOS, but also providing an opportunity and a pipeline for EPPs to directly pipe data into the ODS without going through taking everything through the ecosystem. So this is kind of the technical side of what we're looking at setting up to support the dashboard side. So a quick little bit of what's this mean for you? Do I, as a program, need to do I need to require new information systems? Do I have to buy a whole bunch of new things? We don't think so. We're moving to the ODS in order to encourage quicker data input processes and to fuel those dashboards, but it's not going to be required of EPPs. There's going to remain sort of the manual and semi-manual, semi-automatic processes in place for data collection. Second question that we know is likely on folks' minds, is this going to affect my 2018-19 or my 2019-20 reporting? We don't think so. We think that, if you're kind of functioning in the main line of stuff, that you'll be unaffected by that. And we're going to allow for, again, additional options for putting stuff in, but here in the next couple of years, we don't see those as being mandated. Now, we do see working with a limited collection of programs who are kind of out front in this work, and in the next couple of months, we'll be talking further about that. We hope to collaborate with closely on these technical solutions. But for most folks, you'll be able to kind of just keep doing functioning as far as like data collection side, what's necessary. Third question around, can I use dashboards if my program does not connect to an ODS? So again, we're still collecting our normal data via ECOS, and that ECOS is going to go into this space where it can be mixed with other TEA data and provide that internal facing dashboards that y'all have access to. Now, we think that we're going to be able to set up additional space within those ODSs for y'all to put locally relevant data, maybe data that isn't mandated to be collected, but that you would like to see interacted with this data and that can fuel additional elements of your EPP-facing dashboards. Again, these are options that we think that folks will be able to take advantage of, and we're looking to support folks in learning how to take advantage of those. Not only learning from TEA, who's able to provide some technical specs, but also engaging in that community learning where we're learning from other folks who are doing this work and who are out in the front. The last piece, do you as an EPP have to use these dashboards? Listen, we hope you will, because it's a big project for us. We're really excited, and we think that, you've heard from your peers today about the utility and their vision around these types of projects. And so we plan on being highly informed by that work and by other work that teacher prep programs from around the country have provided information and guidance on setting up dashboards and the types of indicators and data points that they're interested in seeing. So although at this time there's not a mandate, you won't have to use these dashboards. Our goal is to set these pieces up so that they will have value for you. We think, and Nicole, yes.
And also on that point, they're designed with you in mind. We've been using your stakeholder input and feedback and sessions over the last couple of years that it's been collected to design these dashboards to answer the questions that are most useful for you. So while there is no mandate, they're designed with you in mind. So hopefully you will use them.
That is the goal. Just a few next steps to close out. I know we're right up against time, and I appreciate everybody being flexible and a majority of our audience being hang around. So we know that there's going to be more conversations such as this one. I know that this was a relatively tight timeline, and then we even got the additional piece of getting to change platforms at the last minute. Again, appreciate so much y'all's flexibility. I'm pretty sure we were able to capture a recording of this, and so we'll be able to share that as well. But we are looking at holding these types of conversations in the future, kind of in the coming months, as we're engaging and standing up this work, the technical side and the dashboarding side. So I think that we'll have the opportunity for more folks to share from EPPs, from different perspectives, be able to share about the great work that they're doing, and kind of to really build momentum and to continue to break down any silos that might occur across different spaces so that we're really able to engage in learning with each other. You know, we encourage you to reach out to your colleagues. We want to help facilitate this conversation, or all of these conversations, plural. And so we think that, you know, we think one of the things that we can do is help to provide an email list. Nicole has provided her email if you want to make sure that you are involved when these conversations are happening. And I would encourage you to go ahead, drop Nicole an email, but data conversation, the subject line, is going to help us keep track of what's going on. I don't know about y'all, but we get a lot of emails every day. And so being able to sort helps us certainly. And like I said, be on the lookout for more information on this project. You know, I'd add one thing that's not on here is like, okay, so maybe I'm, you know, maybe I'm the legal authority at an alt cert, or maybe I'm the dean at an EPP, and I just kind of sat through this conversation. I'm trying to figure out like a what's now. I would encourage you to have some local conversations, maybe with your folks in IT, maybe with your folks who have been engaging in some data-driven pieces, maybe with people who report some data locally, and start to suss out, where are we at? You know, what are our operational systems like? Are we feeling like we can engage in these pieces? Are we excited about these things? What types of capacity or additional learning might we need to engage in? I would encourage y'all to start to engage in those local conversations. Also, again, thank you so much to our folks who volunteered to present and share with you all. I can't say thank you enough for taking the time, not only to have conversations with Nicole and I previously, but to share with your peers here. It's really a testament to the great work that y'all are doing. Put their information up here. Gonna leave that for just a quick minute in case anyone wants to take that down. But we'll also post the slides. Mm-hmm. We'll also post the slides. I reckon this will all show up in an email that goes out to the email list that was originally hit with this webinar information. And also we'll put it up on our program provider webpage so that y'all can access this and these slides there. And then of course, the last piece, thank you again all so much for joining, for your awesome flexibility, for being able to jump around on platforms. I'm Mark.
I'm Nicole.
Ryan Franklin's the Associate Commissioner. We enjoy always working with all of you. We are all the way at time. I encourage y'all to, reach out with us, to us if you have any additional questions. And thanks again so much for taking the time today.